I could talk to people all day long in person, and I can run a Mosaic Arts online business, but just trying to get 4 people on with many of you watching from all over the world, I have goosebumps, my heart's going a mile a minute, and my stomach's in my throat. So aside from that, welcome to the first ever Mosaic Arts Online panel discussion in the times we're living in now. So that's how I want to start this first one, which hopefully will get easier nerves-wise as we get into more of these. But I want to start with welcoming everybody from around the globe. And if you just saw my very last email, it's because Australia had a time change last night. And thank goodness someone was able to alert me and make this a 9 a.m. for them in Sydney and Melbourne. And if you are on, welcome. And thank you from everywhere else if you figured out what time to be here. We appreciate it. And if not, you will see it in the recording. So to start, I want to welcome you all, like I said, and I'm thrilled to see so many of you here. And I kind of have to read this a little bit because you got to get all this information in. But we do have 3 of the most incredibly talented Mosaic artists on with us today. And they're going to share their experience with all of you based on the questions that you asked last week. We got a lot of submissions and we really appreciate that. That really helped guide us on how we were going to use our time and discuss the color, which is the topic, which is color. So each of them come with very different paths of how they got here, and they're going to share that with you. But I want to welcome Carol Shelkin, Anabella Wewer, and Erin Pankratz. And how it's going to work is we are going to ask each of them a question and they're going to answer it. And then we're going to have them all 3 discuss it. And there's 6 questions that will be asked like that. And then after that, we have some kind of more process how-to questions that were asked, and we're going to address those as well. And then in the last 10 minutes, we will discuss some questions and answers that can come through the chat. And if you can see on your computer, there's a chat to the right. And we have another tech person, better known as Jerry, my husband, that's running the other side of this. So right now, all I can see is Anabella, Carol, and Erin, but I know, and you all can see the 4 of us. And then everything that's happening on YouTube with the chat, Jerry's managing as well. So with that said, I would like to introduce each of them so they can give you a little background on how they got started and color and how important it is to them in their art. So I'm going to start with Carol Shelkin. Please tell us where you're from and a little bio.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tami, for putting this all together. I'm really excited about doing this, especially with Erin and Anabella. Thank you guys for being here as well. I am in the United States. I'm in Philadelphia, the big city. I've always lived here and I've always loved the big city. As an adult, I love to travel all over the world, but my first 25 years was living in the city and exposed to the lights and exposed to the cars and exposed to people. So there was a lot of activity, especially when I went to school. I went to Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, actually, to be a painter. And when I graduated, I actually became a potter for 30 years. And I applied my painting skills to my pottery. I stopped doing that probably about 15, 20 years ago, and didn't do anything for a while, for about 3 or 4 years. And wanting to get back into the arts, I decided that I was going to Google new kind of art, because I really wanted to express myself in a way that I haven't in the past. Believe it or not, Mosaic came up, which was really strange, but that came up and I started making Mosaic back then. And because I lived in the city, because I loved the lights and the activity of the big city, it was just natural for me to work with color like I did as a painter. And that's where I started. So color to me is really important. I always have my color chart right here, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But just to get to know me, You'll know that I am full of bright colors, brilliant colors, and that's what I love being exposed to, like to work with in almost a traditional manner, but always leaving the door open for personal expression and how I feel.
Yes, we love that about you and the work that you produce. Erin, can you give us a little background and where you are?
Where am I? I am way up north compared to probably a lot of people. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. I was actually born up in the near
North
the
of North.
in Northwest Territories, near the Beaufort Sea. And I mention that because, like Carol, where I come from, color plays that influence has played a huge role on my life. I've realized in the last 10 years that Northern Lights, having grown up with the Northern Lights and those dancing colors, really influenced me a lot. After being born in the north, we moved down a little bit and to one of the areas where there's the best Northern Lights. And I lived there till I was 10 and out in nature. So I had nature and color and the Arctic light or the Northern light is different than it is even where I am here. And so light has played a big role, which affects color. So then we moved to Edmonton, where I am now, and I was training. I was a dancer, and then I went to like a fame high school, an arts high school. It was very like people would dance in the halls. It was glorious, and I was in the professional dance program as well as the visual arts. So I was doing both. So when I quit dancing, there was some lag time, but I was either going to go into fashion design or art, and I chose art. So I went to art school after I quit ballet at 20 and went to school for about a year and a half. And I was in the sculpture department after my foundation year. So I've had a lot of exposure to techniques because my mother was a weaver when I grew up. She started weaving when I was 5. And then she took a fiber arts program when I was in junior high. And so that was paper making and dyeing fabrics and I was exposed to printmaking and one of the other ones I wrote some notes, the weaving, and I was a sewer and I learned how to pattern draft and sew and of course work with color and fabric and dance. Of course, there's set design and lighting and all of those things are a consideration. So color has been a big thing in my life. So my approach to color is very additive. Mosaic, technically, you're working on a surface, and that's the surface that you see, and you have to choose all those colors. But the way that I work now, I can just keep adding and adding and adding, and trying to, like a painter, and build the feeling that I want to have. And what was I going to say about that? And I came to that process because I wanted the immediacy of the other types of art, like drawing and painting, incorporated into Mosaic, which uses hard materials. And it's really hard to get gestural. It can be done, but it's hard. And I wanted to try and find a way to do that, incorporate drawing. And that's when I started using the mortars, like paint. And it kind of freed up so many ways of working, even making my own tesserae now. But my approach, the basic approach for me is how I approach color is having a why. So why am I choosing this color palette? What is the feeling I'm trying to get from that? Because color it's a synesthetic thing. We have emotion and color are attached. So they create a mood and a feeling. And that's what we're trying to do with the art, is trying to get a reaction out of people. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Well, and a piece behind you is a perfect physical example of everything you basically just suggested. How you have taken, mortar and made paint out of it is just unbelievable. So we're so happy to have you here to talk about it. So Anabella Wewer, can you please give us a little background of your beautiful life?
Sure. So I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and
Anabella, get a little closer to your microphone. There you go.
I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and I am a graphic designer by training and by profession still. But I didn't realize as a little kid running around Caracas how much color was affecting me and how much it was ingrained there until I actually got ready to teach color and realized how much the influence of kinetic artists, which work with light in sort of a three-dimensional form, were great examples we have in Minnesota for that. And that was just normal to me. The sidewalks were painted, the buildings around me were painted, and the color changed as you move. That's Maestro Carlos Cruz Diez's philosophy, was that the color should happen, and it happens when you move and the light affects it. Anyway, so all of that was in there, and I never thought about it. And I went on to study graphic design, and I've been working on that for, I don't know, way too long, 30-some years. So my color has always been very precise. I need to get the exact color. I need to match that Pantone book through printing processes. So when I started working in Mosaic, I fell in love with micro mosaics first. So it was all smalty, filati pulled. And it was so shiny, and I was like, oh, okay, I like it, but it was little, so it was okay. But then the shiny of the smalty kind of threw me, and I started working with stone when I went bigger. And my colors for a long time was very subtle, and it continues being that. But that's just what I was attracted to. And then when I did start working again with color and using smalty, it went really small because I realized that first the colors weren't exactly what I wanted. Like I just couldn't, I don't have the whole library. So I was frustrated by that. And I ended up going small. My tessera tend to be small because I'm constantly mixing color, and I'm mixing it visually using, techniques that were, to me, it was just sort of very intuitive. And then I was asked to explain what I was doing. And I was like, oh boy. And that's when I really started digging in to see what had happened and where it was coming from. And so I went into the theory a lot to understand it for myself and to be able to explain it.
Oh, that's awesome. And so what I want to do is we're going to dive into some questions here, and each of you can answer, a little bit more about the specific question, and then you guys can have a conversation, and I'll kind of cut you off at the time I think it's right for us to keep this going, because we want to keep this at about an hour. So I am going to start with the first question. I'm going to direct at Carol, and it's, how do you choose the color palette for your mosaic work?
That's actually a really good question. And it starts with inspiration. We all are inspired by different things, whether you live by the beach, whether you live in the city, whether you live in a cold zone, a warm zone. We all have inspiration around us. And now, of course, with the internet, we can actually go to the museums right online and be inspired. We're also inspired by each other, which is really important as well. So what I do, what was the question?
How do you choose the color palette from all your inspiration?
Yeah, the color palette. I get distracted really easily. I can see all kinds of things in front of me. So there's a lot of distraction. So how I pick my color palette is really about the content and back to the inspiration. I remember years ago, I wanted to make a mosaic of my mom that had passed away. And I didn't want anything that was too bright and too exuberant. So I chose a color palette and I went right over to the color wheel. In my head, I have this in my head, but some of you might have this in your place where you create. And what I wanted to do is really make it soft. So there's one little trick, there's one little tool that I use, and that is to work with 3 or 4 colors in a row. And they really blend nicely. You can go around the color wheel any way. Here as well, 1, 2, 3, 4, and these colors will blend nicely. So what I did is I thought about the blues because I was feeling quite blue at the time. And I used these blues and these turquoises and the greens, and look how nicely they blend. And that's the colors that I used. So not only did I use these colors, but I also used, and these are the brilliant colors up here, but I used the tints and the tones as well. And what a tint is, for those of you that might not know, is a color with a little bit of white in it, and a tone is a color, a brilliant color with a little bit of black in it. And then you have your pastel colors as well. So not only was I using, for this particular mosaic that I wanted to have very muted, the brilliant colors, but I also used the tints and the tones, if you can see all the different shades. And that's what tints and tones are as well. There's different shades of the same brilliant color. So that's the first thing that I do. I always refer to the color wheel and how colors react with each other. And that's really helpful to me. But it really starts with inspiration. I made a mosaic of my grandchildren, and they were young and little, and they were playing in water, and they were vibrant. And I think I used every color in the rainbow. And what my process is as a painter, to make a sketch, make a black and white painting, and then make a full color painting, and then mosaic on top of the painting that I created, always keeping an open door for change. It's not like paint by number, but it kind of is, because it's my creation and my inspiration of what I'm looking to do. I'm going to hold up painting, 2 paintings actually. And I hope you can see this. And I found this, and I'm going to tilt it a little bit so you can
tilt it the other way. Yeah, there you go. It's better.
And you can see on one side there's a black and white painting, and on the other side there's a full color rendering. And that is my process. So I don't show this very often. So I have to tell you, you are pretty much the first group of people. I hope somebody's out there. Let us know. Say something to us.
There are. There's over 200 people out there seeing this.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if it was just my cousin or
so Erin, how can you kind of interject into this as far as the same kind of question?
So yeah, for me, when I'm doing my own art, so not stuff that's public art, I'm painting with the mortar on my substrate. So I'm choosing the color palette and I'm experimenting, and that's pretty immediate. And then when I go to pick my tiles, I'm picking and placing and no, that's not the right color. And I'm curating based on the feeling and what I've decided, what my why is, what I'm trying to express. So most of my work is very colorful. It's like what I'm known for. I can do both, but I prefer the very colorful. And I want to have some chaos, but I want to have balance within that chaos. So I'm always fighting with those two opposing factors. You know, there's movement, because I want to create movement, and the dancing colors, the way that I lay the tiles, but also the colors that I choose. They're working together. There's that color and context. Colors act differently on top of other colors, and that's what I'm doing all the time, because
Yeah.
I'm using tessera on top of adhesive on top of another color. So
Yeah.
I have to understand how they're interacting and acting with all the other colors. And so I'm playing with color. I'm playing that, and that's really one of the things that I think is the best advice, is to play, is to learn the basics, learn about what's happening,
Yes.
play with it, and pay attention. So,
and it's intuitive to you in a way, because it's come from so much experience and practice.
yeah, I'm a lot like Anabella. I came to it really intuitively, and I haven't necessarily done what she has done and gone really deep with it, because I did have a lot of that color theory in junior high school, and art school. So, you know, I have that basis. I couldn't teach that right now, but I can talk about how to approach playing with color. And I think you have to pay attention. I'm going away from the direct question, but it's that paying attention to the colors that you're picking, and how they make you feel, and how are they attached to the inspiration, like Carol was talking about. Like, this is the mood that she wanted to exude in that piece. So that's the color palette she chose. So that's what I'm often doing with mine, is I'm paying attention to how they're interacting and what I want to say.
And
so, and that requires practice. So
yes.
Yeah.
Anabella, what can you say from your point of view with the same question?
So to pick my palette, it's really, it's about the work. So it depends what I'm trying to say with the work. Some of my pieces start fossils, and I was imagining that they would come back to life. So the color comes in gradually and ends up with either a realistic view of that fossil or whatever I imagine it is. I love gradation. So sometimes the actual colors I'm picking have to do with the gradation. So sometimes every tessera is a slightly different color depending on the space that I need to fill. But I'm not aware of it when I'm thinking about it. I guess I am more now that I've had to explain it a few times. But when I pick a color and I'm like, okay, I like this color and I want to use it with this other color that I also like, when I'm working and I put them together, sometimes they don't work. And then I have to, figure out what to do there. If I'm working over with black thin set, which I do often, it's kind of robbing the brilliance of the color a little bit. So I actually have to step it up brighter than I have to pick smalty that is way brighter than I am comfortable with, even sometimes. But that's what it takes to make it look at the tone that I intended.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And again, working with practicing and just keep trying, as like, if the color you are using black thin set and then the color's not enough, you got to try more until you find that one that speaks to you. Okay, going on to the next question, because we are eating up time, and who knew? This one's for Anabella. Is there a way to think about mixing materials related to color? Because kind of where you go when you're using natural stone, minerals along with glass. Can you elaborate on that?
I mean, I mix pretty liberally, but at the same time, I'm paying attention to the reflection of the material and the brightness and all of those things. So sometimes I would put, like, for example, a piece of gold that matches the next tessera exactly when you look at it straight ahead, so you don't even know that it's gold. But when you move to the side, you're going to see it kind of sparkle a little. And I do sometimes have to, I step away from my work to see what's going on all the time, but I purposely walk away and come at it from the side because sometimes if a piece is going to hang in a gallery or on somebody's wall or whatever, I want to be aware of what those reflections are doing. So there's that. I do mix or rather surround Smalty with marble. And that's just a pretty easy thing to do in that the color is right and the marble is more subdued, but also not reflective. So when I'm mixing colors and materials, I'm paying attention to all of those things. Mixing sort of evenly, things that are matte and shiny is fine. It just kind of all blends together. But if you only put in one bright thing in between everything else, it's going to just sort of call attention to itself. So that's sort
Right.
of how I go about it.
And Carol, can you interject a little bit on that question? Is there a way to, because you don't mix, you actually don't mix materials that often, but when you do you, not even a stone? Carol's like, no. Not even a rock off the ground, just no. Erin, do you want to interject anything? Because your materials do change a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean,
materials. Or you have something to say?
Hey, Carol,
Yeah.
Carol, sorry, say something.
primarily I pay attention to the material, and it's always stained glass, whether it's wispy or flat or iridescent. That's what I pay attention to. I will interject some Millefiori because
Yeah.
I happen to like the colors in Millefiori, but most of the time, if it's and I'll squint to see the primary color in the Millefiori to see if it goes with the stained glass that I'm using. And I'll put that together. For instance, if I'm using a wispy piece of stained glass with a lot of muted colors of gradation, it might be light blue, medium blue, dark blue, and I cut a piece for shadow under the eye, which I love portraiture, if you don't know already. I might put a little piece of blue Millefiori with like a little bit of pink or something light, just to give it a little highlight right there. Or maybe I'll put 3 pieces of Millefiori and I'll nip it in half or put it on its side and I'll play with that. But I'm only playful with matching the colors and working with value in different colors. The light, medium, and darks in all colors. For instance, pink, red, maroon, or light blue, medium blue, dark blue. And I'll play with that primarily. But stained glass is my forte for sure.
Yes, it is. And Erin?
So in the mixing materials, I do like to do that. I use a lot of the porcelain unglazed tile, because when you cut it, the color goes all the way through, like Smalty. So I love to use that and use the ribbon with the cut side, because it has then it's got the machine side. So I like altering my materials, cutting my materials, getting a new look out of them. The mortar is also, it's a material and it's interacting with the Smalty, the shiny of the Smalty that I often use. And I'm thinking about that all the time. And the unglaze, when you split it in half, it gets up between matte shiny. Same with something like Litovi or yeah, I like it. So for me, I like to get my hands on as many materials, have color that I can play with, so that I have a huge palette. I've always had a lot of material to play with. I used to sell the tiles for a while, so I had gradations. I'm like Anabella. I'm a gradation file. So I like working from an abundance of color. I don't like to be limited in what colors I can use. So I have a lot of tile on hand. And it's hard for when you have a student who has to go online and pick the colors they want, and they have a budget, right? And so until you start like sort of gathering lots of stuff to choose from, because then you can make those decisions like Anabella was saying, that's not quite right. What's the next step up? And you have it. So I think a good tip in the beginning would be telling people to buy, like in the beginning, buy mixes. So you have you build up the gradations and you build up the possibilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do work with stone. I collect stone in our River Valley here, and I incorporate that. And to go back to the real question, it's that matte and shiny and playing with the textures of it as well, because that's how they reflect the color too.
Yeah.
Those different matte, shiny, medium, they reflect colors differently in different lights. So you have to, again, paying attention to all of that and thinking about all of that. And sometimes it can be a bit much, especially in my works. It gets a little confusing. But if you can go back to your why, I talk about that in my courses all the time and workshops, that if you have a why, that's what grounds you in your decision making. So like Anabella said, well, that's not quite working. If you know what your why is, then when you're questioning what you should do, your answer is, what's your why? What's your inspiration? You can go back to that.
And if I can interject something, by the way, as I'm listening to us speak, the one thing that I hear is that we are all inspired by one cohesive thing, and that is how the material works. We all work differently, as you'll see in the workshops on Mosaic Arts Online. We all work with different materials, and we're all looking for that voice in the material to speak. And that's one of the reasons that I don't grout my stained glass. I might grout the background and make it a little flatter, but I want that foreground, I want that portrait to really shine, to really reflect the light. And I'm hearing, Erin, that that's what you want as well. And Anabella, that's what you want as well when you look at your piece from every angle. So that's fascinating to me.
That there's already a cohesiveness coming out of this topic from 3 different artists. And Anabella, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I have a little interjection I want to make that's part of what's so important and dynamic about this group that's sitting here talking to us. Oh, wait, it's over here. I already did Annabelle. It's Erin, sorry. My first time moderating, by the way. Erin.
You're doing great.
Oh, thanks. Okay, this is a question from a student. Someone has a lot of clear and patterned glass, and they'd like to use it in a mosaic, and that I don't have to grout, but would like to use colorful mortar or adhesive.
So if it's just clear, whatever mortar, so I use mortar all the time. I don't use any other kind of adhesive. So I would mix my mortar to the color that I want reflected to come through, and that's kind of the end of story. Other than you can make a whole bunch of different kinds of mortar and stick different tesserae down with different colors of mortar, or mix a substrate and stick them on while it's wet. Couple tips that I would suggest to think about with that is that test, because different mortars will cure. They don't necessarily dry, they cure differently. So sometimes you can see the cracks underneath. So a smaller piece would be better than a bigger piece, but also test. And different mortars are different, and I don't know what people have available. Different areas have different mortars available. I would suggest using the higher quality ones because they will dry more evenly or cure more evenly. So there's that. Also, to extend that question further, there are a lot of transparent colored glasses out there. And so that color theory comes in quite readily when you're dealing with a green transparent glass and you're going to stick a color under it. Don't put red if you don't want brown, because that's what you're going to get. So you're going to get that mixing happening. So don't mix the opposites. So you've got a green and you want to make it more yellow, then you use yellow mortar under it. And again, testing. We all do it. We all test and play. I've got something beside me and I start sticking things just to see if it's going to work or not. Or put it on the piece, and if it doesn't work, try it off. I don't often work that way. Usually I know. Also keep in mind that mortars will dry lighter, so you have to take that into consideration. So you're kind of working a little blind sometimes with that colored transparent glass. Again, that's why it's good to test it and let it dry, and then you know exactly what you're going to get. But yeah, color theory comes into play with that. But you can do all kinds of exciting things if it's just clear and sticking down with different colors. I hope that helps.
I think it makes sense, and I want to go play now. But Carol, can you elaborate a little bit more on that in any of the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I actually was nodding my head because I do the same thing. You know, it just depends what color is next to what color because they react the same way that a bright yellow will react with a red. The red will make the yellow brighter. So you really have to play around and see what works for you. And what helps me is to actually put all of my materials out in front of me, like a palette. And I'm going to try to show you this again, and let me know if you're able to see it.
Tip back.
Back.
Back is better.
Keep going. There you go. Now lift it up. You got it. There's your palette.
So you can see the gradation a little bit from light to dark. And I have my palette of color that I'm using right in front of me. And I'll pick up the glass and put it next to each other even before I start nipping, just to see if it works well together. And that way I'm experimenting as well. When I was a painter, I would try the colors on the side of my canvas. And now I just try the colors on my work table wherever I am. And that's really helpful because I think a lot before I start creating, and I practice a lot and play a lot before I start creating, and I experiment a lot. I just don't do it. I'm not spontaneous. I probably do as much thinking as I do creating when I'm working, because it really helps me to understand what my voice is in my vision and what I want to say. So I often have little pieces of glass all over the table next to each other to see how they work together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's great. And Anabella, what can you interject?
I mean, I'll echo everything they've both said. It's all about the interaction of colors. And I do want to get back to some of the clear glass, though. A lot of times people want to use a clear or translucent piece of glass in between something else. And it's going to look actually darker than clear because it's adjacent to the other tesseract, so it kind of looks like a hole. And you know, you don't even see it right away because the thin set may be wet, so it's actually reflecting more light. And then when it dries, it just, when you look at it from far away, it looks like a hole. So I've been asked a few times, people just have whatever Daltever or something lying around and they want to use it, and it is going to actually look darker, so be aware of that.
Yeah.
But other than that, is yeah, it's all interaction of colors and you know, picking, like when I don't know if you guys can, if I can do, yeah, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's left over from one of my pieces. I can't get myself to just stick it in the jar, so there it sits. But that's a lot of the process that I go through. I just play with materials, and when I'm trying to pick colors, it's just, you know, little trays, and eventually they come together, and I do it over, you know, black, white, gray, cardboard, depending on what I think I'm going to do, and just see what happens.
You guys, this is awesome. I'm actually, like, as I'm listening to all of you, so overwhelmed by how dynamic this is with only 3 questions in. And something I didn't say in the intro that I want to say now is that not only are you 3 like incredible artists, you are all 3 award-winning Society of American Mosaic Artists, SAMA winners And Carol Shelkin has also been an invitational artist. So I am so grateful to have the caliber of artists here, and that, again, just kind of floating back to Sama and how we all would love to be together and we can't now, but this is what it's about. It's about community, no matter how we can do it. And I just want to say how grateful I am for everyone that has gotten on this call and taken the chance. And the three of you, I'm going to start crying, the three of you that have taken this chance to do this, because this is right now, this is where it's at. And I can't thank you enough. You guys are incredible artists, and you're just so eloquently sharing something from your kitchens and your bedrooms and wherever you are, so we can make this work. And it just really means a lot. And it means a lot to have everybody on who is listening to this and sending us questions. And this is very, very likely going to go over an hour. So if you can't stay on, I'm really sorry, but this is too good to not keep going. So on that note, the first three questions have been answered. And so I'm going to go back to Carol now. And the question is, if people see colors differently, what quote rules does it make sense to follow?
Ah, that's a really good question. So it is true, we all see color differently. I'm not a scientist, a neuroscientist. I don't know all the technical answers about that, but I do know that we all have something called cones behind our eyes. And some people actually have 4, which is very unusual. I wish I did.
I wish I had 4.
I was like, 4? People have, mostly people have 3 and sometimes 2, which actually attributes to some people being colorblind, not being able to see red and green very well. But it really is about passion. It really is about your vision. You know, it is about what you see, not how you see it and what you want to say, not what the next person says. It really is, making art is all about you. You're the only one involved. And when you make the color choices, it really is about understanding what your soul desires. I talk about rules a lot, but at the end, I say break the rules and create what makes you feel good. And of course, that happened with the Impressionistic movement of the 1850s, which I do actually talk a little bit about in the workshop that is on MAO. But it really is about you. It's about your soul, what you see, what works for you. If you don't like to use the color orange, don't use it. If you like to use all the colors, then use all the colors. Figure out a way to really express yourself with all those colors. So, did I answer the question?
Yeah, I've always said, you know, follow the laws and break the rules.
Yeah.
That's what an artist should do. And Anabella, how can you interject with this?
You tell me what the question was.
Yes.
20,000 thoughts.
If people see colors differently, what quote rules does it make sense to follow?
Okay, so I guess I have 4 cones. I don't know. I was told that I see more colors than most people, and that can be a blessing and a curse. So I don't know if anybody out there follows me on Facebook, but there was a massive call for a particular color that I just could not. And my pieces sometimes stopped until I find it, because that's just me. But yeah, I mean, we are making art. I agree with Carol, to please me. I am making my art to please me. You guys each your own. Sure, there's that, you know, we want everybody else to like it also, but ultimately you have to like it. So there are times, however, when I get to a place and I don't particularly like green and I don't really like, you know, brown, but that's what it's calling for. Sometimes the piece pushes me into a color range that I'm not crazy about, but it fits. And so I have to come to terms with that or make it work some other way. But that, especially in a gradation, that's where it's going. And because I can mix my colors, because we're dealing with glass or lithotripsy or whatever, I have what I have. So I have to make it work.
That's great. Erin?
Yeah, mine's a bit different. I'm a bit of a hard ass more than maybe because I often try and tell people, like, I've even done it in my workshops, try and force people to just try colors they don't want, you know, and start exploring that, not necessarily in their finished pieces, but in their practice, like challenge that color palette. But it's a different approach. I think I agree, in the work that is going to be their own creative expression to go with who you are and what you're trying to express. And I feel that people should challenge those things too. If you don't like orange, try it, see, you know, like, and then figure out why you don't like orange and how are you reacting to it, and then you have a basis of why you're not using it, and not just that you don't like it. I did a piece last year, a commission, and it was all in fairly neutral tones, and it was a huge. Some people loved it so much, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's so stressful." It was hard for me to do. I could do it. I know, like, all of the same rules that I applied to myself for a piece like this. Still came into play for that piece, but it was a challenge, and I'm glad I did it, and I'd probably do it again, but it's not my natural tendency. But I learned and I grew from that, and so kind of like what Anabella said, whatever the piece calls for is what I need to do. So again, back to what I was saying before, listening and paying attention, right? So yeah, paying attention to what colors make you sing, and exploring why is
Right.
that? Everybody does see differently. If you're 4-coned, Anabella, I'm so jealous. I talked about that in some of my presentations, because I think the regular eye can see like 2.8 million hues, and 4-coned can see like another 2 million or something like that.
I just like seeing colors, and people were like, "That's not there." So I
argue with people with color all the time. They're like, "That's red." No, that's pink.
I asked the doctor.
Well, one of the things that you can do also for everybody out there, there's a couple of apps that you can download for free, and it's called Blendo. One is Blendoku, like Sudoku, but Blendoku, and it's free, and you can really work on developing your color and your value. And then there's another one that's called I Love Hue, HUE, which is another one of my favorites. And I play with this all the time. And basically, they give you a lot of colors. You have to put them in value or color order. So you can develop this as well. You can't just say, well, I'm not like that. Well, it's something that you can work on. So
all of us have, I'm pointing to the screen because there's all, listening to our histories and what we've done. We have all practiced this. It's all, so maybe we've come to an intuitive from our childhoods, and we've paid, all three of us have mentioned where we live and how that has impacted our color.
Right. Yeah.
And, I think that just that paying attention. And then when we've moved on to the more formalized education, we've done the work. And so everybody is capable of doing that work.
Yes. Yes.
Wanted to interject quickly. This is actually a class sample that I did for my color workshops in the online course, and I picked the colors that I don't like, and I did it on purpose to see if I could make beautiful gradations with color. I mean, I love blue, but that's the only one that's there that I like. And it was just an exercise for me, and also just to keep me really very conscious of what I was needing to eventually show the people that I was teaching. And the only way for me to just not go with making something pretty was to just use colors that are not my normal palette, just to force myself into it.
So yeah, no, those are all great points. You guys are making incredible, you're just developing these into great answers. So Anabella, this is for you. How do you go about choosing your color composition, especially with abstracts using found objects? How much time do they designate to figuring out, how much time do you designate to figuring out your color composition and the process you use?
Well, back to what we talked about a little before. I really just, especially when I'm using found objects or materials that I'm not using all the time, I start mixing without, especially on an abstract piece for sure, but just to get the colors right, I just start mixing and see what works and what doesn't, and look at what's reflective and what's not, and try to figure that out long before I mix or cut anything. Obviously, I want to work in colors that make me happy, and the palette is about whatever I prefer, unless I'm doing something figurative, and then it needs to be what it is, unless it isn't, like Miss Shelkin makes all these portraits with, you know, colors that are not what we see on a face, and they're beautiful. But yeah, I mean, it's what do you like? What do you like to work with? What is your message? A lot of my work is about time and place, or a moment in time and place. So that dictates the palette. It's not just about the colors that I like. Sometimes I have little piles of color that I love, or I go and I pick up, you know, whatever, a piece of Toby or something. I'm like, I'm going to use this, except that then when I actually use it, it doesn't work. And I just have to be able to let it go.
Let it go. Exactly.
Let it go.
When it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's a skill to learn.
Yeah. And
It
yeah.
really is.
Right. So Erin, can you elaborate that on for you when you're doing your color compositions too?
Yeah, when I'm coming up with the color scheme, it's very fluid. So I start, but I know that it's going to change. I know that I'm gonna eliminate some and add some, and so I have such a range of color. I'm blessed to have so much variety, and yet still, like Anabella, I'll struggle trying to find a color. But yeah, it's really emotional work for me. Like, it's coming from an emotional place. So when Anabella said that some time and place, I do have works that are also based on time, not maybe a moment in time, but like moments of time, or, you know, I'm trying to create trying to create a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at those colors, seeing if they're evoking that feeling. And it's a process. It's not okay, this is my color palette. Now I'm gonna work.
Yeah.
No, like Carol, she thinks a lot about what she's doing beforehand, and she's working, and I think Anabella's similar. And then, like, I am very spontaneous when I work, but it's a reactive. I'm reacting and also putting my own will on things, and and uh, I haven't talked about color in context. That's one a lot. I mentioned it earlier, but that reactiveness. So how those colors are reacting, but then I also have a colorful substrate. So I there's a lot of experimenting in one piece, and I'm trying things and they fail, or, you know, I might eliminate a color very early on, and then near the end it needs to be introduced. So yeah, it's a process, and I think people need to be open to that. You know, there's no right or wrong. Like, if it's not working, then that's okay. You're learning from that, and you can change it. And, like, don't beat yourself up. Just keep playing. Take the risk.
Well, and I think it's important to know that you guys, your work doesn't start when you just put your materials on the table and start gluing stuff down. There is so much that has happened before you physically start adhering. And I think that might be a message that is sometimes lost to people, is that you don't just get a bunch of stained glass and start cutting it, and then magic, you have this portrait that is like mind-blowing. And so I think that is part of the process of being an artist, is there's so much before you ever mix your first thin set or mortar, Erin. And, you know, half of it may be in your dreams, and then you wake up at 4 a.m. and you're like, oh my God, that's what's got to happen. And it's still 4 a.m. And so, exactly. So I think that's a big part of all three of you and me as artists, that we really come to our work. The whole part of the project, a lot of it happened before we ever physically put anything on the substrate.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, my question now to Erin: how do you begin to think about color beyond what color is and what you think, quote, goes together?
Okay, so I think a lot of what I've talked about has already answered some of that question.
Yeah, probably.
And not necessarily thinking about what it goes together. Things go together for me. Can you repeat the question again? I know I'd have it
It's
written.
okay. It says, how do you begin to think about color beyond what colors you like or what you think should go together? Do you have a way of looking at color without being emotionally attached to what should be?
Yeah, I'm not. There's colors I like. There's a palette. I like a very vibrant palette. And I should add, one of the things that I learned working with this really vibrant palette is that you also have, you can't work in one tone or one vibrancy. You have to add some white and some black. Like you need those to balance things out. So whatever you're doing, you need that, the value in, like in Carol's, the hues or the tones, because if it's all saturated, it's too much and it gets lost. So you have to think about tone and value and vibrancy, because some colors, there's a butter yellow that's like kind of muted, but then there's a butter yellow that is similar in color, but it's really, I don't know, it's got more moxie or something. I don't know, but you have to balance that as well. And it comes from just paying attention and playing with them and knowing that there are all these factors. So if you read about color, you play those games or whatever, you do the work and you pay attention and learn what you should be paying attention to. I think that starts to come, and you start to get your own likes. You know, you start to develop that and you start to know, and then it just starts to come together. It's very, I don't think there's one answer. I think
I agree.
I'm a Webby thinker, so it's gonna, like, there's a lot of variables within that, and doing the technical reading and then doing the actual practice. I'm sounding like a broken record now, but
it's okay. It's okay. I'll ask Anna.
I wanted to address that goes together. Often things don't go together. It can be really cool.
Right.
Like that add attention you might want to be creating too. So what are those colors doing? What are you trying to say? Because that's how you get the answer.
No, that's a good one. Anabella, can you elaborate more on, if you're thinking about color, what goes beyond color that you like or you think goes together?
Well, I think we've all said that sometimes a color asks to be in the work or doesn't fit. And I think we need to be willing to let that happen. I know in workshops, sometimes people tell me, oh, but I already cut this color, I want to use it. I'm like, well, but it doesn't fit. It doesn't work for your gradation, or it doesn't work for the context that it's in. You know, set it aside, you'll use it some other time. I know we're working with, you know, precious materials that we pay a lot of money for in some cases. So you know, save it. You'll use it eventually. But I think Erin and I have huge amounts of material. And it's not about hoarding material. It's about getting all of the colors for whatever. So sometimes one of my gradations will have, you know, 27 tones of that color. So that comes from a lot of different places. And sometimes I love a color and I want to use it and it just does not work with whatever's next to it or whatever the direction the work went into. And I don't start something knowing exactly what to happen at the other end. I have an idea. Sometimes it is very precise and I get stubborn and I'm going to find that color. But the work itself tells us where to go. More often than not, and we just have to to that and to do tests and you know, like any piece of mine that you guys there has a whole bunch of work that nobody has ever seen. Some of it is in the trash and nobody's ever going to see it. But it was a test and it was a lesson and I learned something and then it's time to move on. It's the same thing. I think I've only ever finished a piece in a workshop once. Because I learned what I needed to learn from that, and then I move on to do my own.
That makes sense. Carol, can you elaborate a little bit more? I think we're going to go about 10 more minutes, and then I'll have some ideas of how we can continue this conversation.
Yeah. So I agree both with Erin and Anabella, and what I hear from everybody is to be confident and make art, make mistakes, experiment. The three of us do that, and I know Tami does as well as an artist. And don't be afraid to experiment. One of the things that I think that's really important is to remember that artists come in all different ways. Clearly, Erin and I are full-time artists. Anabella is a graphic designer. Tami is also a full-time artist as well and an entrepreneur. But artists are librarians, and artists are dancers, and artists are people that work in the gift shops, and doctors and lawyers. So be confident in whatever you're creating and just make art. You know, you'll figure out what you like to work with. You can experiment with Smalty, and you can experiment with Mortar. You can experiment with Wellbond. Nobody mentioned Wellbond.
And now they have. She's built an empire on Wellbond, people.
Favorite adhesive with stained glass. But you know, the idea is to experiment and be creative and have materials. I have probably about 100 boxes of glass, all different shades, all different colors. And I just, you know, look through everything and pick this and pick that. And I pick more than I know I'm going to use because I need options.
Yes.
You must have options.
Lots of inventory. How do you do it otherwise?
It's an investment in yourself, you know, whoever you are. So that's what I would say. Just keep on experimenting, keep on making art, take workshops, and really enjoy being creative.
Well, as we know, this conversation could probably go on for another 2 hours, but we are going to start to wrap it up. And I know there were a few questions that you guys did send them in, and we have them. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the three of them answer them in an email, because it really could go on a lot longer. There's also going to be a free tutorial coming out on how to use grout, colored or black or gray. It's a big, big question. People want to know how to use different tinted colored grout, and that's going to be a free tutorial coming out by the end of April. So on that note, I do want each of you to elaborate on how your courses do tie into color. And then everyone gets the bonus at the end of giving me your 2-minute spiel about why color is so important in each of your courses, starting with Carol.
Well, you always start with me.
Yeah, because you're always good at talking, and we love that about you.
What's the question? No, I'm only kidding.
It's Impressionism in the Mosaic using stained glass, and how does color relate in that course?
Right, right.
Well,
Well,
someone want to go farther that way.
right. One of the things that's really fun about teaching in the past 30 plus years is that I've taught painting, oil, watercolor, how to make Ukrainian eggs. I've taught tie-dyeing, how to make leather shoes. I mean, I've probably hit every medium in the world. With the workshops that you offer in Impressionism, it teaches people how to paint, how to start a mosaic by understanding color, by understanding how to blend colors and make it into a final mosaic, which is my process. And it really is a cohesive way to feel secure about color choosing, because you're making all of your decisions with the paints. And you only use 5 colors of paint, so don't be afraid.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I really emphasize, that it is step by step, and it is easy, and it is successful. And I've taught this workshop several times, as well as have it for sale on MAO. And it has been so successful. And the way that it works is that I share how you put unexpected color on your work and make it look very realistic, and people can understand it when they look at it. So
That's great.
it's
and Erin, it is, and it's a great way to learn is by the painting first. It really does expand understanding, instead of being sometimes overwhelmed by stained glass being the first palette. You have paint first, and then you can choose your stained glass. So it's a really great way to learn. And then Erin, elaborate on Cover Everything and your tinted mortar substrates.
Yeah, I have the two that I normally teach as one, but there's just so much technical information for people with the mixing of the colors. So there's with the different types of pigments, so the dry and the liquid, and then how to mix them, and how to use them and paint with them and experiment and play with them. So my courses are really about that playfulness, giving people the opportunity to take risks and try things out and play and muck about and make mistakes, and but also a lot of technical information on the proper way, because there is a proper way to do this. It's not just muck about and play and have fun, because your mosaic might fall apart if you mix things improperly. So I talk a lot about that. And then the dot one, it expands further on how, and a lot of color into context, because that comes into play with the layering of the dots and the placing of the tessera on the substrates that you learn in the first video. So it's very playful, freeing, just trying to loosen people up and feel safe to take those risks, to experiment with color, to just have fun with it and learn and make some mud by accident, because that is a problem when you're mixing paints, right, Carol?
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, and there's some instant gratification in that course as well. And the thing about Carol and Erin's courses is that you are watching them create, which is not how it works if you're in a live workshop of any kind. You actually are there to get inside their head and watch their fingers do what they do because of what's inside their head. And that's a gift you cannot get anywhere else. So that is the playfulness. And then coming from Miss Anabella, the theoretical of inside her brain, should you be so brave? which is amazing. Tell us a little bit about your course.
So it is really color theory, which can be applied to anything. And then towards the maybe the last third of the course, it's more specific about our mosaic materials.
Yeah.
But the course is about playing, not necessarily with mosaic materials, but with anything that is color, and understanding how the colors interact and how the light is playing with them. And really it's not so that you're thinking about that when you're working necessarily, but so when something is not working, you know why. And you know, to highlight or to give vibrancy to a color by introducing its contrasting color, which is a lot of what they do in the school in Skill in Virgo. My work is all andamento, so that was an interesting thing for me to have to think about. Is how do you introduce it when you have, you know, lines? Yeah, but it is really all about testing and understanding why something happens and sort of getting it in there in your brain so that when you need to use it, you just do it.
And it's done through really easy, applicable lessons that don't have to be really difficult to comprehend. Using yarn and paint chips and different things that really make you comprehend on a level that is not, oh my God, what am I doing? It is not daunting at all. It's quite the opposite. So the three of you together with what you offer in the online courses is incredible. So on that note, you don't need to look at my face anymore. You now get to look at till midnight tomorrow night. You have to take this information down. Sorry, it's going to be in the chat as well. Which way? This way? In front of my face. How's that? Good? Okay. You don't even see my face anymore. I just want to make sure you can see me. So in the red is the course that is being offered for the discount. And you have to use that code exactly as it is, where it says Anabella-15, Carol-15, Erin Bundle, Erin Dots 15, and Erin Substrate 15. And so if you want any or all of those courses, they're going to be 15% off till midnight tomorrow night. It will also be in the chat. And midnight. Like I said, this is the bonus. We aren't offering this anymore till no 15% offs anymore. This is strictly because you guys came, you committed, you showed up, you gave us a lot of love to be here. So we want to give the love back to you. So it's going to end up in the chat now as soon as Jerry can enter them. So now you're back to my face.
Midnight.
Yes. Wait, say something, whatever you want, say it.
Midnight what?
Midnight tomorrow night. You have till April 5th at midnight to use those discounts. They are going in the chat now, so just hang a couple more minutes for that. And I cannot thank you enough. Can you wrap it up with a couple words from each of you? And I'm sorry if people do drop off. I just want to say, is there anything else you guys want to add?
I want to thank you for getting this all together. I know it was a lot of work. And
thank you, Tami. Thank you for your initiative.
There, we don't even see the list, but I guess there's a lot of people out there. So thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you guys. I can't thank you enough for being brave and being the inaugural group to get up here and do this. And yes, I would do it too if I know I don't look like a total dork. Yeah, there's a lot of internet craziness going on right now. I'm glad it all stayed and it worked. And please, everybody, stay safe, stay well, stay home, and you will be getting emails for more of these happening in the very near future. Wash your hands, do everything they tell you to do, but more than anything, get out there and create. I can't tell you how important it is that you turn the news off and turn your creative on. And even if it's for 10 minutes a day, just so you feel something, and actually that 10 minutes will turn into an hour and you won't even know that happened. So again, I can't thank you all for getting on this chat and this discussion today and chatting. And like I said, we will get the grout video out because a lot of people want to know how to use grout in different colors, and we can show you that in a free tutorial. And because there were so many questions and this would have gone on so much longer, Carol and Erin and Anabella, little did they know, we'll be answering your questions in an email that will go out to the Mosaic Arts Online, because all we want to do is stay connected with you guys. It really means a lot to continue this kind of engagement the best we can right now. So from Jerry and I, we say thank you and really, truly stay well. And subscribe. And so, oh, make sure you subscribe to Mosaic Arts Online YouTube channel, because we'll be dropping some things there as well. And if you do know someone that wanted to see this and they didn't, it will be there recorded. But just know that discount for 15% off those 5 courses will only be through tomorrow night at midnight. So thank you, everybody, and have a great Saturday night staying home.
Night. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.